Good morning, NAB. Welcome to the last day of NAB. I'm Vin Moriali with Boris Effects, and we're going to be taking a look at some very cool features in our Continuum product. We're going to be looking at particle illusion. So particle illusion is a 2D particle system that is integrated into Continuum, and the cool thing about it is that we've also integrated Mocha. Mocha is going to allow us to drive all the emitters that are in there. It's also going to allow us to do masking and all sorts of cool stuff. So on the screen you can see some examples of that, and we're going to get into how we do each of them, and let's start off with that. And to do that, to begin with, we are going to look at probably one of my favorite effects that I've ever had the pleasure of putting together, and that is this gentleman right here, this nice little knight. Come on, Adobe. Let's play. Alrighty. Well, Adobe doesn't want to play, so we're going to give it a little bit of time. But we have this knight here. It's one of my favorite effects, like I was saying, especially with Game of Thrones coming back on. We got this knight, and he's walking through the forest, and his sword bursts into flames. And ironically, this is actually one of the easiest effects to complete in particle illusion. And before we even get into all the cool stuff about it, the integrated Mocha and all that, we are going to take a look at how do you create this effect just in particle illusion. So to do that, I am going to select my knight. Now, as I mentioned previously, the particle illusion is part of our particle system. So it's just a plug-in, and you're going to go down to the particle unit and drop that right on. And the first thing that you are going to do is click Launch Particle Illusion. And it's going to take a few minutes to pop up. Alrighty, so this is the first thing that you will see when you load particle illusion. We have our stage right here, and that's where all our footage is, and it composites over the actual video. And as we start to work on our emitters, you can see that we have all of the parameters available here. Right over here, one of the cool things about particle illusion is that it ships with over about 3,000 different emitters. They're all fantastic emitters, and you can do anything from creating fireworks to sparkles to all sorts of cool things, rain, snow, all of that. You know, if I were to actually select one, I like this new meteor trail. You can see there's a preview window up in the left-hand corner. One of the great things is if I just click on that, I can get a live real-time preview if I just click and drag. So I have a really good way of seeing exactly what that filter is going, what that emitter is going to look like. All right. So in order to recreate my night in the woods, we are going to basically do auto tracking, so basically keyframing. Now again, one of the great things about particle illusion is that we've integrated Mocha. So for this example, we're going to hold off on doing the Mocha for just a moment, and we're going to see how you can auto keyframe and do a lot of your work right from within particle illusion. And to do that, I'm going to actually start from scratch. So I'm going to delete that effect that's on there, and I'm going to go over to my search parameter, and I will type in flame sword. Particle illusion will find me a number of emitters that work for me. I do have variations on the flame sword here. We can do different colors and really have some cool effects going on. But I'm just going to take the regular flame sword. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to actually move my CTI all the way until just to the point where he grips his sword. So it's almost like a lightsaber coming on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my effect, and then I'm just going to click right on the stage, and it creates an emitter point. And then what I'll do is I'll come right up here to just off screen where the sword ends and make another click, and there you have it. There is a nice flaming sword there. Now, particle illusion really wants to continue creating points, but I don't need it to, so I'm just going to hit escape, and that'll leave us with the 2 points. Okay, so what we have here is we have this flame, and now we have to start keyframing it. Now, in order to do that, I'm actually going to go to my parameters here. So this group here, the first group that you see here, controls the overall look and feel of the effect itself. We can go in and make changes to the various little parameters that are there with the flames, the sparks, everything that makes that up. But right now we're going to take a look at the main properties, and I'm actually going to dial that opacity down, not all the way, but just enough so that I can get a sense of here's where the effect is, here's where the sword is. Now, in order to auto keyframe, basically what I'm going to do is I am going to click this nice little toggle animate static mode button. and when I do, it turns red, and that means that any movement that we make, any changes that I make are going to get recorded and will animate accordingly. So all I have to do to auto-animate this is I'm going to move forward a few keyframes and just manually adjust my flame. So move forward a little bit, and as it moves, we'll adjust accordingly. And as you can see, particle illusion will animate between the effects, and I can go back in and I can tweak it. Now, if I accidentally don't grab it and I click somewhere on the stage, particle illusion will create a new emitter, but I can just hit escape to cancel that out. Now, as you can imagine, where we only have a 20-minute demo, I'm not going to make you sit through me keyframing a 10-15 second clip, but you get the general idea of how quick and easy it is to use particle illusion to auto-animate things. Now, if I wanted to take a look at one other feature that's in here, first off, I'm going to turn up the opacity. Actually, what you see here is that when I do that, you notice that there is now a graph that appears down the bottom, right about here. And you'll notice that opacity is now in a red box. As I mentioned before, when we have the red auto keyframe on, any changes that we make are in fact going to get recorded. So what we're seeing here is the representation of that opacity going from 0 to 100. If I want to get rid of that, I'm just going to move over to the keyframe by clicking that and just change it to constant, and then that will erase that specific animation. Okay. So what we have here early in the very beginning of this is we have our flames. Now they don't quite look the way you see them in the final product, and we're going to get to how you do that with different composite modes. But what I want to show you is, as I mentioned, up here are all the parameters that will allow you to change the overall look of the full emitter. But I can go back in and I can change parameters for the sparks and the flames and the smoke and everything that's sort of making up this effect. If I open up the flame section, for example, I can go into its properties, and I can go and I can change and open up a window that will allow me to change the shape of the various properties and what the image sprite that's being used there. I can also eventually add my own shape. But I can also, this is kind of cool, seeing as how I mentioned Game of Thrones earlier, I can go in here to the color section and just make little changes. Let's make this a nice blue. And now, instead of having a regular flaming sword, we have something more akin to Dragonfire. These are small, simple changes, but what I want to kind of impress upon you is that even though particle illusion is made up of pre-created emitters, you have full control over how those emitters look. You can customize them in any way, shape, or form. Now, because again, like I said, this is a 20-minute demo and I don't have time to go through the entire animation for a 15-second clip, I'm actually going to cancel out of this and we're going to take a look at what happens once we get back into our host. So I'm going to cancel out. I'm not going to save that. I'm going to go back to the original version. Now, when you actually apply an emitter, this effect basically looks like this. All right, so you have it, and the flame sword is there, and it actually matches what we saw in particle illusion. Now, this is not compositing in a way that makes me feel like, hey, that's actual fire. So there's a couple things that I can do. First thing that I want to do is I'm going to go over to the composite style, and instead of having it be direct, which is its default state, I'm going to come down and select alpha and apply mode. When I do that, I have the ability to composite, light, darkness, screen, multiply, scale, all of the basic compositing features are available. For this effect, I set it to add mode, and that's giving us more of a glow look to it. Now, there are a couple of other things I did to finish the actual effect. Since we're in After Effects, I created a little mask with an orange solid, and I just briefly animated that so that when his sword turns on, it follows the path of the flames, and you see the reflection on his armor. Another thing that I did was I actually created an adjustment layer where I applied BCC turbulence. Now, turbulence is a really cool effect that lets you create ripples and distortions throughout the frame. When you apply it directly to a clip, it's going to look like that, where you see that the entire scene is rippling, and it doesn't quite look exactly the way we want. Because Continuum has integrated Mocha into pretty much every aspect of it, I can then go ahead and launch my pixel chooser, which allows me to select which pixels I'm going to apply that effect to. And what I did here is this launches Mocha, and I went in and I actually created a very quick, very simple mask that follows the that animates around the sword. And this allows me to mask out my pixels in such a way that when I play the effect back, you can see the flames rippling. And that's just kind of a cool way to sort of use the power of Continuum and use the power of Mocha to add onto a very basic effect. But I mentioned Mocha, and this is where it actually becomes very interesting, because we're going to take a look at how you can use Mocha, which is integrated into particle illusion, to really start to drive your effects. So we're going to leave our knight to go do his whatever he needs to do. We're going to go over to Mocha motion tracking, and what I want to show you is I have this clip here of a city, and you'll notice that as I pan across, all of my particle effects, all of the fireworks that we have here, they're staying stuck with the motion of the camera. So what I can do, and let me show you how I do this, because we're going to use Mocha to drive the location of all of our emitters. Now, when we talk about motion tracking in particle illusion, there are two types of tracking that become available to us. The first thing is, I'm going to turn on in my transforms. I'm going to go to this drop-down menu, and I get three options. I can transform the world, I can transform the emitter, and I can transform the world and the emitter. And what does that mean? Well, imagine, if you will, that this microphone here is actually a candle. I have this candle, and there's a flame coming off of it, if you imagine, and some smoke. Now, if this candle is sitting straight on the desk, and we move a camera in front of it, if I need to track where that emitter is, I'm going to track the world, because the camera is the only thing moving. Now, if I were to pick up the candle and start moving it around so that the flame then is affected by the air, the location of the candle, you see the smoke wisps going all over the place, that would be emitter tracking. And that's a situation where I would choose emitter. Now, because all we have here in our scene is a panning shot of the skyline, I'm just going to choose world. So when I choose world, from this drop-down menu, what happens is that I now have access to Mocha motion tracking. So I'm going to open this up, which will launch Mocha. And you'll see here that I actually have two sort of trackers that are available. One is my emitter offset, and for this particular effect, we're not going to use it. In fact, I am going to turn it off. Just turn it off visibly. What I want to focus on here is the world center, and you'll notice that there are two features here that as part of the mask. You'll see the red round mask, which is going to track all of the pixels within that range, and you see the crosshairs, which is my world center. That's where I'm saying this is the motion that I want to track. Now, I've gone ahead and actually tracked all of that already, and as you can see, as I play that back, that tracker is staying locked pretty darn close to that pier. Now, you may notice some stretching in the mask that's there, and that's because as the perspective changes, Mocha is looking at the pixels. Now, if this was a masking thing that we were trying to do, that might be problematic. But because all I want from this motion tracking is a general understanding of where objects are in our scene, this track is actually pretty perfect for what I want to do. Now, I'm going to close out of here. One of the things that I always recommend, now you can set up your effects any way that you want as you're working on them, but I always recommend that the very first thing you do when you're trying to create a scene like this, do the motion tracking first. The reason is, once you do the motion tracking, Mocha will link all of its effects directly to that motion track. Your motion track will drive the position of all your emitters. If, for example, you don't do that and you decide that I'm going to apply all of my emitters without doing a motion track, if I turn it off, you'll see now all of the effects are sort of just floating in space. All the effects just float in space. They're not locked onto anything. It becomes harder, I think, to artistically set where you want your emitters are if you haven't done the motion tracking. You can still do it, and once you turn on the motion tracking, everything will follow that motion path. And if you do need to make adjustments, I can, like for example, I can adjust the offset to change that position. But by and large, just make sure that you start off by doing the motion track, because what that'll do is that also allows me to launch particle illusion at any time. Go in here and add in new emitters. So if I look at this section of my effect, from right here to right here, there are no emitters in this area, or there's no effect. There is an emitter here, but it's not triggered until right about there. So if I were to come in and say right about here, I want to add a new firework, Let's just type in firework. And let's choose this nice blue, bright blue, very distinct firework. If I come in here and I just pop that right there, if I start to play it, it's reading that motion tracking that I've already done with Mocha. So it makes my job significantly easier if I've already done the tracking, because particle illusion is absolutely going to read that and use that to help me artistically place in the scene where I want my effect. Does that make sense? Good, good, good. Okay. So, moving on, that's basically world tracking. We do have the ability, like I said, to create an effect where if the emitter itself is moving, so for example, in this shot, we have a little bit of camera movement, but we also have the boat moving across the scene. And what I wanted to do was add the smoke coming out of the smokestack. So, in order to do that, we need to track both the camera motion as well as the emitter. So if I go over here, let's turn this off for a second, and we'll look at the actual effect. What I've done is, rather than just, like previously I set up track the world, I've actually selected track the world and the emitter. So what this does is, when I launch Mocha, I can now use both my world center and my emitter offset, and you'll notice that they are in fact in the same location, because the camera motion as well as the smokestack are moving at roughly the same speed. So this allows me, if I play this back, you can see that I have a really solid track here for where I want my emitters and where I want the world center to be. And this will allow me to create an effect where that emitter, the smoke, is affected by the motion of the object that it is attached to. So it's very simple, very easy, and Mocha is just incredibly powerful at generating or at driving your visual effects. All right, there's one other thing that I want to show you that makes Mocha integration so fantastic. Now, as most folks know, and as I showed you earlier with our night friend, Mocha is included in every single particle. Mocha is included in every single continuum filter as part of Pixel Chooser. And what Pixel Chooser does is it allows us to use that motion tracking to also mask out areas within the scene. So what I want to do is, I've created this shot here of a father and son sitting on the lake, and they are looking out, and there is an aurora in the background around the mountains. Now, if I turn this off, let's launch particle illusion. I'm going to show you where this can become problematic. And where we need Pixel Chooser and Mocha for our assistance. So as you can see, I set up in particle illusion this aurora. But if I play it back, particle illusion doesn't know this aurora needs to stay in the sky. Particle illusion doesn't know that it doesn't really work if the aurora falls on the father and the son. So what we need to do is ask for a little bit more help from Mocha. To do that, rather than choosing Mocha Motion Tracker, I'm going to choose Mocha Pixel Chooser. And that'll allow me to once again launch Mocha and create a mask, in this case masking out the mountain range, where particle illusion will say, hey, this is exactly where we want our effect. Now, for those of you who have used Mocha, I'm going to show you a really quick trick that I like to use. I don't know if you know this, but if you look at this, tracking this mountain range, that's a lot of points to get a good track, and that's also a lot of pixels that Mocha is actually has to follow. So if I do a mask that is this complicated and covering this much area, it is going to take forever and a day for Mocha to really grab all of that information. You don't want to do it, especially if you're in a hurry, especially if you have a deadline. So I'm going to show you a little trick to make this very easy. What I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to delete this mountain range mask, and I'm going to create a new one. But before I do that, I've turned on this linked track, and you'll notice that I have a little mask right here. This little mask isn't doing anything except following those trees. It's a very small area for Mocha to grab those pixels, and those trees, for the most part, stay on camera, stay in the scene the entire time. You'll also notice that those trees move in the same way as the mountains, so we're getting a good track from them. If you have a complex track, I highly recommend that this is how you proceed, is that you track a small object that doesn't have a lot of pixels in it, and that'll give you a good, clean, quick track. So what do we do about the mountains? Well, new with Continuum 2019, we have this lovely magnetic spline tool. So I'm just going to click that, and I love this. Nice little contrast. I do one click, and the Mocha Spline tool is just going to lock itself right to the edge of that mountain range. Give you a really nice spline there. But you'll notice that once I get to the trees, that's going to cause a problem because that's going to throw off my mask, or my magnetic tool. The simple fix to that is if I just click down and hold my mouse button, it turns into a freehand tool. And then I can come back here, make it really easy, and then I'll say, oh, you know what, let's let go, and it's now has turned back to the magnetic tool. I do a couple of clicks here just to tell it where to go, and boom, in less than 10 seconds, I have created a very complicated mask that would have taken me quite some time to roto, and let's face it, when you're dealing with roto, you really want to make it get through it as fast as you possibly can. Okay, so that solves the problem of creating a very complicated mask very efficiently and very quickly, but that's still a lot of particles, just a lot of pixels that we have to track, and that's going to take a while. But here's what you do. If you remember, I have this little link track where I track the motion of those trees. That got done really, really quickly. I don't actually have to track my sky. All I have to do is come down here, select my mountain range, click on link to track, and link that to the itty bitty track that I created earlier. Let me just turn that off so it's no longer visible. And if I play that back, you'll see that my mountain range, my mask, is now, for the most part, completely tracked. I did this really quickly, and generally I'd spend a little bit more time, so you do see a little bit of drift there. But by and large, I basically tracked that mask very quickly and very efficiently. All right, so with that done, I'm going to close that out. I'm going to save that. And now what you see is as I play this back, let's do the pre-rendered version here so you can see it faster. As I play that back, my aurora is no longer bleeding into the father and son. It's staying locked up there in the mountain range, exactly where one would expect an aurora to stay. So those are the two ways in which Mocha integration makes particle illusion incredibly efficient, incredibly fast, and really, really fun to use to give you some really great results. I got a little bit of time left, and so what I want to do is show you one more thing. So here I delivered this to a producer that wanted a lower third, and I said, okay, cool, I have directed this project, and so what I did was I created this nice little lower third around the Earth, and I created my title in Title Studio, and I've got this nice little sparkle that kind of comes out and does all sorts of cool things. I've got some nice little numerical effects up there, and I send that to my producer. My producer says, hey Vin, that's great, but I want something that's even more sci-fi, and I need it, by the way, 5 minutes ago. So what am I going to do? Well, I have a number of options. But what I can do, because particle illusion is now no longer standalone, it is in fact integrated into Continuum as a plugin. Not only do you get the Mocha integration, you also get the FX browser integration. And that allows me to select very quickly and preview a number of different presets and looks that I can just quickly go in and make those changes. Now, in this case, I can select something like this. This looks a little bit more science fiction-y to me. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit apply. And, okay, it didn't exactly go where I wanted it to. Okay, the preset is set at a different location from where my producer wants that lower third. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my transform section. I'm going to hit world. Now, initially when I did world, when we were looking at the fireworks, the next step was to go into Mocha. We don't have to do that here. I'm just going to go here and look at my world transforms. And I'm going to go here to my world center, and I'm just going to manually move that down until it is centered nicely. And when I play that back, I have a far more sci-fi inspired look. But you'll notice, because I changed the preset that's there, I've lost all the effect, the nice little digital kind of numbers and cool sci-fi stuff that's over here in the corner. I can fix that real quick by going into and launching Particle Illusion. And now I know, specifically because I've used that before, this is actually an effect that is part of our heads-up display category. So I just type in HUD for heads-up display. I'm going to close this just so we can keep track of what's going on. And if I go into my heads-up display, my UI, I can select an effect called Matrixy, which produces this digital sort of digital chaos. Now, if I go and I apply it, let's say let's go in the left-hand corner, it applies as a point, which means that all of those numbers and all those effects are going to come out of that one single point, and that's not quite what I want for my effect. So I'm going to go into my properties, I'm going to come over here to my shape, open up it, and change it to an area, and that will allow me to now select an area where that effect will appear. Now remember, as I said, if I accidentally click off of the effect, it will create a new instance, and I can just simply undo that. But all I have to do is select an area where I want that effect to appear, create the box, and then I'm just going to hit save. And when I go and I play my effects back, you can see that I now have the digital noise that I once had in the corner. And that is a very quick and easy way to use the power of particle illusion, Continuum, our FX browser, to really get great results that you can get to your clients. I want to thank you for your time. I'm Vin Moriali with Boris Effects. Now, we got a couple of great deals that are going on here for NAB. If you're purchasing a single package, so for example, Continuum or Sapphire or Mocha, it's 25% off all new licenses. We also have, if you're going to buy a bundle package, 50% off all bundles with new licenses. Don't forget to, by the way, get your ID scanned, your badge scanned, because we do have a giveaway. You can be entered into a raffle to win up to $75,000 in prizes from both us and our partners. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Like I said, I'm Vin Moriali, and I'll be around for the rest of the day. Enjoy the last day at NAB, guys.